The German Shepherd puppy was already screaming when I opened the gate that morning. Not barking, not whining, screaming. A raw, heart-shaking sound that sliced through the usual morning chaos of the shelter yard like a siren through fog. I dropped the clipboard. The dogs in the other kennels had all gone silent, ears flat, heads low. Something in that cry wasn't normal. It wasn't fear. It wasn't hunger. It was memory. His name for now was just number 2, 8 months old. Black and tan coat, too thin for his frame, and eyes like storm clouds about to break. I'd written those notes myself on the intake form 6 days ago. Found wandering near I-10. No chip collar torn, but none of that explained why he woke up like this every single night. My name's Marcus, and I've worked animal rescue in Houston, Texas for nearly 12 years. I've seen dogs flinch at raised hands, hide from loud voices, freeze when you call their name. But I'd never seen a pup wake up like this, bolting upright, slamming into the back of his kennel, like he was trying to escape something that wasn't there. I stepped closer, careful. He didn't growl, didn't bark. He just stood there, panting, staring through me, chest heaving like he'd been running in his sleep. The moment I reached to unlock the latch, he flinched and dropped to his belly tail, curled so tight it nearly vanished. But something told me, don't back off. So I crouched, waited, let him smell my hand in the air. And after a full minute, he crawled forward, inch by inch, until his nose barely touched my boot. I whispered, "It's okay, buddy. You're safe now." He didn't believe me. Not yet, but he wanted to. You could see it trembling behind his eyes. I named him Echo because that's what he was. A cry from somewhere far behind him that kept coming back. Echo didn't bark, he didn't chew, didn't dig, didn't jump or play. He barely moved unless you asked him to. Most of the dogs at the shelter were chaos wrapped in fur tail, wagging ball, chasing, licking machines, desperate for attention. But Echo watched quiet, still always watching. The volunteers thought he was just shy. New environment, new people. He'd come around, but I knew better. This wasn't nervousness, it was survival. He wasn't waiting to trust. He was waiting for something bad to happen. The screaming happened only at night, always around the same time. Somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m., he'd bolt upright, slam into the back of his kennel, and cry out like he was being torn from something or someone. Cameras caught it. I watched every clip. He wasn't dreaming, he was reliving. On the 7th night, I stayed at the shelter. Brought a sleeping bag. I set it up just outside his kennel. Lights dimmed, radio off, a dead quiet. The others were asleep. Echo was curled in a ball near the back wall, head between his paws, eyes half shut but never fully closed. At 2:17 a.m., he snapped awake. No warning, just pure terror. He leapt, hit the kennel bar, spun and screamed. Not like a dog, like a child. That sound, if you've never heard it, you wouldn't believe it could come from a puppy. I sprang up and crouched low, speaking calmly, trying not to startle him further. "Echo, it's me." "You're okay, buddy, I'm here." He didn't hear me. Not at first. He clawed at the corner of his kennel like he was digging through concrete, not out but down. That's when it hit me. He wasn't trying to escape something outside his kennel. He was trying to get back to whatever he'd lost beneath it, a buried toy, a scent. No, it was deeper than that. I opened the door slowly. He didn't bolt. He collapsed like his body just gave out. The second it knew he was no longer alone, I carried him out, all 50 pounds of trembling puppy muscle, and placed him on the cot beside me. He didn't move, just tucked himself tight against my chest, eyes wide, breath shallow. At 2:34 a.m., the trembling stopped. At 2:35, he was asleep. No screaming, no twitching, just stillness. That night, I promised myself we would figure this out. Whatever Echo had lived through, whatever haunted his nights, I wasn't letting him face it alone anymore. The next morning, I drove Echo to our partner clinic in East Houston. Not for shots or checkups, we'd already done that. This visit was for answers. The vet on duty was Dr. Elaine Farrow, someone I trusted with the tough cases. Trauma, neglect the dogs, no one else could figure out. She had a way of seeing through their silence. She met us in the lot, clipboard already in hand. "This the one with the night terrors?" I nodded. Echo stood beside me, pressed against my leg like Velcro. His leash was loose, but he didn't try to wander. Inside, Dr. Farrow knelt instead of reaching. "Hi there, handsome." Echo didn't flinch, didn't move, just stared. His ears twitched slightly, barely, but that was progress. "Any history?" she asked as we guided him into the exam room. "None found him off I-10. No chip, torn collar, no reports matching his description. Nothing." She nodded slowly, flipping through her notes. "Let's check for older injuries, scarring, healed breaks. Anything that might explain this." It took nearly an hour. We worked gently with 2 techs assisting. Echo didn't resist, but he never relaxed either. He was frozen like he thought we'd vanish if he moved wrong. Then we saw it. Dr. Farrow ran her fingers along Echo's ribs and paused. "There," she whispered. "Feel that?" I placed my hand where she pointed. A slight dip, subtle but wrong. Old fracture healed uneven, not life-threatening, but she trailed off, then looked me in the eyes. "Someone hit this puppy hard and not once." We kept going. Tiny scars under the fur on his back legs. A molar that had cracked and worn down his tail thicker near the base than the rest, a sign it may have once been broken. No single injury was shocking, but together they told a story. This wasn't just a lost dog. Echo had survived something cruel. And whatever it was, it hadn't ended quickly. "Chronic trauma," Dr. Farrow said finally. "Weeks, maybe, months long enough to imprint the pain into his nervous system. That's why the screaming, he's not dreaming, he's remembering." I felt my stomach twist. Echo sat by the door, watching us, ears slightly back. Not scared, just waiting. "I don't think we should leave him in the kennel anymore." I said he needs consistency, calm safety. Dr. Farrow nodded. "You want to foster?" "Yeah," I said quietly, already reaching for his leash. "I think he's been alone long enough." Echo didn't resist when I guided him out. But just before we reached the truck, he stopped, turned and looked back at the clinic. Only then did I see it. His tail moved, not wagging. Not yet, but it wasn't tucked either. The first night with Echo in my apartment was quiet, almost too quiet. I laid out a soft blanket near the couch, dimmed the lights and gave him space. He didn't explore, didn't sniff around like most pups would. He just sat curled up in the far corner, like a shadow, eyes half closed but never asleep. I left a small light on, the kind I usually hated, bright artificial buzzing slightly, but something told me darkness wasn't safe for him. At 2:17 a.m., the screaming started again. This time I was ready. I didn't rush in, didn't make noise. I just sat near him, back against the wall, and let him come out of it. His paws twitched, lips curled, body tense like he was bracing for impact that never came. But when his eyes snapped open, he didn't lash out. He didn't run. He just stared at me. "It's okay, Echo," I whispered, not daring to move. "You're not there anymore." He didn't understand the words, but maybe he felt something in my voice, because his breathing slowed just a little. Then he looked down at the blanket and let his head drop. Sleep didn't come easy for either of us after that. By daybreak, I was exhausted but hopeful. It wasn't much, but it was something. A first step, I called into work and took the day off. Echo needed more than food and water. He needed presence, predictability, someone who didn't leave. So I stayed. We walked the quiet neighborhood streets in the morning sun. At first, he was glued to my side, hyper alert, flinching at every sound. But after a few blocks, his pace slowed. He sniffed a fence post, looked up at a bird overhead. Then came the breakthrough. A little girl on a tricycle rounded the corner with her mother. Echo froze. His body stiffened, ears back, posture defensive. But the girl didn't run. She just waved. "Doggy," she said, pointing with a sticky hand. Her mom smiled politely. "He's beautiful. Is he safe?" I crouched low and put my arm around Echo's shoulder. "He's gentle," I said softly. "Just been through a lot." Echo didn't growl, didn't bark, just watched. And when the girl held up her juice box like an offering, Echo's nose twitched. He didn't move closer, but he didn't move away either. After they left, Echo sat in the grass and stared at the sidewalk where they'd been. His ears perked just slightly. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I made us dinner. Chicken and rice. He ate slowly, deliberately, like he wasn't sure it would be there tomorrow. But when I sat on the floor beside him, legs crossed, arms resting, he surprised me. Echo laid down, not curled, not hunched, flat out, head down, eyes half closed. And for the first time since I'd met him, he sighed. Not a growl, not a whimper. A real bone, deep sigh. That night there were no screams, just the sound of slow, even breathing beside the couch. The next few days felt like walking a tightrope in silence. One wrong move and everything might collapse. Echo, the young German Shepherd puppy, was no longer just a rescue case in my file. He was here in my home watching everything. Every sound still made him start, the squeak of the floorboard, a distant siren, the click of the fridge. His instincts were a map of past survival, not present safety. But little by little, the lines on that map began to change. He followed me more now, not out of fear, but choice. If I went to the kitchen, I'd hear the soft tap of his paws behind me. If I stood by the window, he'd sit near my heel eyes, flicking between me and the light outside. Not seeking permission, just checking in. One morning, as I laced my boots near the door, I heard something behind me. A low, cautious chuff. I turned. Echo had placed a rubber toy at my feet. It wasn't mine. I hadn't bought it. It was his, one of the old half-chewed ones. From the shelter, I'd thrown it into the box, with the rest thinking he'd never touch them again. But there it was. I knelt slowly. "You want to play?" He didn't leap, didn't bark, just nudged it forward an inch. That small gesture hit harder than any tail wag ever could. We played, if you could call it that, for 6 full minutes. A slow back and forth, him pushing at me, nudging it back. No fetching, no chasing, just rhythm, trust taking form. That afternoon, like I brought Echo back to the shelter, not to stay, just to visit. As we walked through the gate, the barking exploded from the kennels, dozens of dogs, all shapes, all sizes, calling out, howling, spinning, leaping. Echo froze. I crouched, keeping the leash loose, softening my voice. "You're not going back, just visiting." He didn't shake, didn't pull, just stood like a statue absorbing it all. Then slowly he turned his head toward me, and something in his eyes flickered recognition. He remembered, but he chose to stay beside me anyway. Inside, the staff was stunned. Word had spread quickly about the screaming puppy, the one no one could touch. But now they saw him walking beside me. Tense, yes but controlled, present. Paul, the senior vet, knelt to greet him. "Echo," he murmured, voice even. "You remember me." Echo stood still, then without warning he stepped forward. "Not much, maybe a foot enough." Paul's voice cracked. "There's a dog in there after all." We visited one of the kennels where a recent intake, a small terrier mix, had been cowering for days. The little one trembled in the back corner, afraid of everything. Echo sat outside the gate, silent. And then he laid down, not to sleep, not to rest, just to be level with the terrified dog on the other side. The terrier stopped shaking. "Is he comforting him?" One of the handlers whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Something was happening. I didn't want to interrupt Echo. Once shattered, was offering stability to another. Without commands, without training, just instinct. That night back home, Echo climbed onto the couch for the first time. No cue, no invitation. He just leaped up, curled beside me, and rested his head against my knee. The street lights painted soft silver shapes across the floor. And for the first time in weeks, I saw Echo fully asleep. No flinching, no whimpers, no invisible war dragging him backward, just peace. And in that moment, I realized something. Echo wasn't just healing. He was becoming. The dream came back. Not for Echo, but for me. It was the third night in a row without any screaming. And still I found myself sitting awake in the dark, listening to the soft rhythm of Echo's breath. The silence was different now. Not the kind that weighed heavy with fear, but the kind that felt earned. He lay curled at the foot of the couch, back rising and falling in a peaceful cadence. The moonlight cut a clean line across the floor, meant eye catching the edge of his black and tan coat like ink spilled across canvas. But even with that calm, I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about what Paul said at the shelter. There's a dog in there after all, and now I couldn't shake the question. What had been done to hide him so deeply in the first place? The next morning, I called in a favor. Dr. Lena, a trauma-informed behaviorist, had helped with some extreme cases in the past. If anyone could read Echo's pain like a map, it was her. She arrived with soft eyes and a voice that felt like velvet. "He's beautiful," she said gently, crouching near him without touching. "But his eyes, they watch everything. I nodded. He doesn't flinch anymore, but he doesn't play. Not really. Lena unzipped her bag and took out a small pouch. Not treats, not toys, fabric, different textures, cotton, burlap wool. She laid them on the floor. Echo didn't move. Then after a long minute he walked over, sniffed one, then another, and stopped at a piece of red flannel. He pawed it gently, then again, then froze. A low whimper bubbled in his throat. Not panic, not pain, memory. Lena's brow furrowed. He knows that. The smell, maybe the texture. It's tied to something. She asked if she could keep it for scent analysis. I agreed. That night she called me. You said he was dumped outside the shelter at night, right? Yeah, crate, no tags, just him. There were microscopic traces of old blood on that piece of flannel dry, but human small amounts. My throat tightened, meaning it could be from anyone, but it was deliberate. That fabric wasn't trash. It was personal. My guess someone wrapped him in it either to protect him or silence him. The next morning I brought the flannel back to Echo. I laid it down on the floor. He approached slowly, sniffed it once. Then without hesitation he laid down beside it and placed one paw directly on the center of it, like he was guarding something no one else could see. It took everything in me not to cry. That day we sat in the grass behind the shelter together, not to train, not to rehabilitate, just to sit, Echo at my side, the red flannel between his paws. And for the first time since I'd taken him home, he looked up at me and wagged his tail. Not a frantic wag, not a nervous twitch, just one slow, steady sweep, and then another. And that was enough. It wasn't the sound that woke me this time. It was the absence of it. No screaming, no restless pacing, no phantom growls in the night. When I opened my eyes, Echo was already watching me. His ears perked, head slightly tilted, as if asking if I'd seen what he'd felt. Something had changed. It was subtle, like the first crack in a frozen lake. You don't hear the whole thing break at once, but you know it's coming. We went for a walk that morning, not in the usual back alley of the shelter or the fenced yard, but down to the park, trees, joggers, strollers, squirrels, noise life. Echo stayed close at first. He didn't pull, didn't sniff, just observed. Then we passed a family with a stroller. The baby let out a squeal of joy. Echo froze. His body stiffened. He didn't growl, didn't whimper, just stared. I crouched next to him, whispering, "It's okay, bud. That's just a happy sound." He blinked slowly, then leaned into my hand. Something clicked in him that day. We stayed longer than I'd planned, sat on a bench, watched ducks. A kid ran up with an ice cream cone, dropped half of it on the grass, and laughed hysterically. Echo didn't flinch, he wagged. The next day I brought him to a quiet schoolyard after hours. No kids, just empty swings and the echo of laughter long gone. He sniffed around, stopped at the base of a jungle gym, then slowly climbed the first step. I held my breath. The second step. Then he just sat there, tall, still like a sentry on duty. By the end of the week, he had his favorite toy, an old stuffed rabbit I found buried in the shelter donation pile. He carried it everywhere, gently, carefully. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at it for long stretches. I started leaving a notepad by my bed, writing down the things he did. The changes: Tuesday, let a stranger pet his back. Wednesday, barked when doorbell rang just once. Thursday, chased a leaf across the yard. These weren't milestones on a chart. They were pieces of a soul rebuilding itself. Dr. Lena called it integration, trauma untangling itself from instinct. Fear stepping back, letting curiosity walk forward. One night after dinner, I sat on the floor and Echo came over, without being called. He didn't nuzzle, he didn't demand attention. He lay across my legs and exhaled heavy final, as if saying, "I'm home." That night we both slept through till morning. The next morning I walked into the shelter and found Echo sitting by his kennel door, waiting, not pacing, not hiding, just calmly watching the hallway like he belonged there, like he had something to do. Something had shifted inside him. It was more than just comfort, it was intention. We had been preparing for the adoption event all week. I hadn't planned to include Echo. He wasn't ready, or so I thought. But that morning he followed me without hesitation into the van. He chose the seat by the window, and when I glanced at him through the rearview mirror, he wasn't trembling. He was scanning the world outside like a pup on a mission. The event was held at Discovery Green, right in the center of Houston. Families, balloons, tents, laughter, chaos. I expected Echo to freeze, but he stepped out of the van like he'd done it 100 times before, head high, ears alert. The sun caught his coat, rich black and tan, finely glossy after weeks of recovery, and he looked magnificent. A few people passed, complimenting his looks, asking if he was up for adoption. I shook my head gently. Not yet, but he wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was scanning the crowd. Then he saw her, a girl maybe 10, maybe 11, sitting on the edge of the fountain, hugging her knees. No balloons, no family, just stillness. Her name tag read Emma. I hadn't noticed her before. Echo walked straight to her. No hesitation. He didn't jump, didn't bark, just sat beside her and looked in the same direction. She was looking toward the splash of color and sound and joy, like he was saying, I see it too, but I'm okay here. The girl looked at him slowly, cautiously. She reached out and he let her. For 10 full minutes, neither of them moved, just a quiet connection in the middle of a whirlwind. When her mother approached, wiping away tears, I realized this wasn't an accident. She told me Emma had been through something. We thought this would help, but she's barely spoken in weeks. I nodded. He's been through something too. By the end of the day, Echo hadn't moved from her side, and Emma. She smiled, not,